Hi, this is Paulette from the Magical Needle, and this is part 2 of the how to make fabric rolls. So I wound up making this piece a little bigger because I just wanted the base bigger. And then what I did was I took some fabric scraps, jelly rolls, and I just sewed them all together. And then I just stopped whenever I felt like it. And then what I'm going to do next is I put it around the cording, and I just have some binding clips to hold it in place, but you don't need the binding clips. And then you're just going to stitch as close as possible, just a regular stitch, to the edge of the cording all the way down the different fabric strips. So I'm trying to sew as close as possible. I like to use the plastic stick. It helps it when I sew. And you're just gonna keep going all the way down till you're done sewing. Okay, so you could see I have it sewn as close as I possibly could to the cording, and it's really important to get that nice and tight. You really don't want any loose type of fabric bubbles in there. So, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take pinking shears and we're going to cut it as close as possible to the stitch line without cutting in to the stitch line, okay? And I'll show that when I am done cutting. Hi, so I'm finished cutting. As you can see, I used pinking shears and I cut all along the edge as close as I could to the stitching line. I used this method. This is my own method with the sewing and then the cutting along the edge. Most people take the jelly roll pieces of fabric and then they just put it around the cording. They just wrap it around and around and around and around as they go. But I personally didn't feel like I liked that method. I found it more difficult. So this way, it's just more secure and it's just easier, I think, to sew. And then when we start to sew, as you could see, the stitch line is facing the right side, because then as we start to sew, though I'm sewing this way, you see how this is showing, but as we wrap and we wrap and we wrap, the cording is going to cover this, so it'll be completely covered. And I'll show you that in a minute. Hi, so I'm going to show you how I sew with the fabric on. Now, I don't do the whole entire bowl in fabric. I've done some completely in fabric, and I have just sewed continuous strips of different colored fabric. Sometimes I just use all long jelly rolls, and I don't even cut them. I just sew them together strip by strip. So it's like one giant jelly roll, and that's what I do. And I even started the jelly roll here in the beginning as well. But I'm not doing that. I really like how it looks when it's mixed with the cording and then the fabric, and then I'll do a row of 2 or cording and then some more fabric. So I'll show you. So as you can see, the cut edge is facing the right, because when we go round and round, I'm going to cover that with the new row of cording, and I'm pushing with a plastic stick in so it holds it tight as I sew. See that? so you could see how it's starting to look. Now I wanted to show you, you see how this is sticking out over here, this edge? So you're going to take this piece and you're going to cover it. And then we're going to sew. Make sure you catch both rows as you sew. And then what I start to do is I hold it in my right hand and then I slowly start to lift the base up a little bit, because that's actually going to start to give it that rolled bowl edge, to get that bowl shape. Okay, we're gonna keep doing this. See how I have it lifted just a little bit? Keep sewing. And then I'm almost at the end of that piece of fabric. But then I'm just going to have now the cording sit on top of the picking edge. And I'm still, with my left hand, I'm lifting the bowl a little bit to give that shape, a bowl shape. Now, depending on how you lift the base, depends on, it will give you different shapes. Now, there is a book that you could buy on how to make this using different shapes. I think I bought mine online. As you can see, it's starting to take a bowl shape. See? One of the things I did forget to mention is that I am using Aurifil thread, and it's cotton. And I love Aurifil thread for this. This one is a teal variegated, but they have all different types of variegated and different colors. Now, if you want it where the thread fades in, just do a beige thread. It's whatever you want to do. Now, as you can see, it has the bowl shape. And what I'm doing is, as I'm going round and round with my left hand, I am slowly starting to lift up higher and higher. And the higher you lift, the more rounder it's getting. So as you can see, with my left hand, I am pushing the bowl up, and I'm starting to put the cord a little over the other cording, and I'm just letting it slide through. Now in a minute I'm going to be adding some more fabric. So as you can see, the bowl shape is really coming along well. I'm adding another row of color. So I'm holding the bottom of the bowl with my left hand and I'm pushing it up, and then with my right hand I am sewing the fabric on the edge of the row before. And you're going to keep doing this around and around and around. You can make the bowl as large as you want. So what I did was I turned the bowl inside out so you could see some of the little fraying. That's just normal, and that's what's going to happen. You just can't control that. That's just the fabric. It's always going to fray a little bit. So then the outside is what was on, you were sewing on the inside before, as you could see. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm ending this. So I'm going to finish it off. So I cut the cording at an angle and I added a little tape, and I'm covering it up, and I'm going to sew it down, and then I'm going to make another spiral, but I'm going to sew the spiral on the outside, or you could actually hot glue it. It may be kind of hard to sew because it may be so thick. Now the other option is sometimes I'll just go along and I make little handles. That's really easy. And sometimes I go back around and I twist and I make little twisted handles. Or I could just taper off, cut it, taper off, and then just kind of like sew it so it's right on the inside over there at an angle. So I did a spiral using fabric, but you don't have to use fabric at all because sometimes it comes out okay and sometimes it doesn't. I recommend using the same color thread, but then what I did was I added a little button just for something on top of the spiral. I actually usually like how it looks without the fabric, but it just depends. So this is what it looks like on the outside. Oops. Oh, and I hot glued this on. So after sewing the little spiral, I actually hot glued the back of the spiral onto the basket because it's too hard to sew, because unless you're using like a huge needle, you may break a needle. Okay, so this is what it looks like on the outside. Looks great. And this is what it looks like on the inside. It almost looks like a watercolor with the fraying. So I hope this inspires you to create something magical.